Caver Trapped Forever, the Nutty Putty Tragedy. In 2009, a thrilling adventure turned into a horrifying nightmare deep within Utah's Nutty Putty Cave. John Edward Jones, an experienced spelunker, set out for an evening of exploration with family and friends. But a wrong turn in the cave's narrow, twisting passages sealed his fate. This is the heartbreaking story of the Nutty Putty Cave, where one man's quest for adventure became a haunting tale of survival that never came. The Descent. Deep in the heart of Utah's desert, just a stone's throw from the bustling streets of Salt Lake City, lies a maze of darkness that has both thrilled and terrified explorers for decades. This is Nutty Putty Cave, a twisting labyrinth of limestone passages that has earned a reputation as a beginner's playground for aspiring cavers. But as with any natural wonder, its inviting facade hides dangers that can turn a fun adventure into a nightmare in the blink of an eye. On November 24, 2009, as most Americans were gearing up for Thanksgiving feasts and family gatherings, a group of 11 friends and family members embarked on what they thought would be a thrilling subterranean expedition. Among them was 26-year-old John Jones, a strapping young man standing 6 feet tall and weighing a solid 200 pounds. John was no stranger to the underground world. He'd explored many caves in his younger days, but life, as it often does, had pulled him away from his passion. Medical school at the University of Virginia, marriage, and the birth of his daughter had kept him above ground for years. Now, with another child on the way, John saw this as perhaps his last chance for a while to reconnect with the thrill of caving. As the group entered Nutty Putty Cave, the air grew thick with excitement and a hint of trepidation. The cave had only recently reopened after being closed due to a series of incidents where cavers had gotten stuck. The local authorities, in an attempt to prevent further accidents, now required permits for entry, insisting that each group include at least 2 experienced cavers. John, with his past experience, was one of those designated leaders. The first hour of their journey was filled with wonder. The group marveled at the intricate formations carved by millennia of trickling water, their headlamps casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. For John, it was like reuniting with an old friend. Every twist and turn of the passage brought back memories of past adventures, and he felt the familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. But as they ventured deeper into the cave's bowels, a restlessness began to grow within John. The main passages, while beautiful, lacked the challenge he craved. He yearned for something more, a test of his skills and courage. That's when he remembered hearing about a notorious passage called the Birth Canal, a tight, twisting tunnel that supposedly few had conquered. With a glint in his eye, John turned to his brother Josh and 2 close friends. "Hey guys," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the cavern. "What do you say we try to find the Birth Canal? I've heard it's quite the experience." The others exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and apprehension on their faces. They knew of John's experience and trusted his judgment. Plus, the allure of exploring a part of the cave few had seen was hard to resist. With nods of agreement, they split off from the main group, their headlamps spotting in the darkness as they set off in search of the elusive passage. As they crawled through increasingly narrow tunnels, the air grew thicker and the walls seemed to press in around them. John led the way, his muscular frame barely squeezing through some of the tighter spots. The group's chatter died down, replaced by the sound of labored breathing and the scrape of fabric against rock. After what felt like hours of twisting and turning through the maze-like passages, John spotted an opening ahead that looked promising. It was a narrow vertical shaft, barely wider than his shoulders. Without hesitation, he began to lower himself into it, feet first. "I think this might be it, guys," John called out, his voice tinged with excitement. "It's really tight, but I think I can make it through." As John inched his way down the shaft, the others watched with bated breath. The passage was so narrow that John couldn't turn his head to look down. He was navigating purely by feel, his feet searching for purchase on the slick limestone walls. Suddenly, John's descent halted. He tried to push himself further down, but something wasn't right. The passage had narrowed even more, and his chest was now firmly wedged between the unforgiving rock walls. A flicker of panic crossed his face as he realized he couldn't move forward or back. "Guys," John called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "I think I'm stuck. I can't seem to move." As the reality of the situation began to sink in, a chill ran down the spine of every member of the group. What had started as an exciting adventure was quickly turning into something far more serious. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a harrowing ordeal that would push them all to their limits and beyond. In the pitch-black confines of Nutty Putty Cave, with John trapped in a virtually impossible position, the clock began to tick. Every passing second brought new challenges, and the fight for John's life was about to begin in earnest. The nightmare begins. As John's panicked voice echoed through the narrow passageway, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. What had started as an exciting quest for the birth canal had led them into an unmapped area of Nutty Putty Cave known only as Ed's Push. This was uncharted territory, a place where few cavers had ventured before. Josh, John's brother, felt his heart drop. He knew they needed help, and fast. With a quick decision, he turned to the others. "I'm going for help," he said, his voice tight with worry. "You stay with John. Talk to him. Keep him calm. I will be back as soon as I can." As Josh scrambled back through the twisting passages, one friend stayed behind, positioning himself as close to John as possible in the narrow tunnel. "Hey, buddy," he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "We are going to get you out of there, okay? Just hang tight." It was 12:30 a.m. when the first rescuer, Susie Mota, arrived at the cave entrance. Despite the late hour, she wasted no time in gathering her equipment and heading into the darkness. As she navigated the twisting passages, Susie's mind raced with possible rescue scenarios. But nothing could have prepared her for what she found. When Susie finally reached John, the sight was heart-wrenching. There he was, a strong, fit young man, now helplessly pinned by the very earth itself. His face was red from being upside down for so long, his eyes wide with fear and desperation. Susie quickly realized that traditional rescue methods wouldn't work here. The passage was far too narrow for any kind of heavy equipment. Instead, she called for ropes and a system of pulleys, hoping they could simply pull John free. But as more rescuers arrived, they faced a cruel reality. The passage leading to John was so tight that only the smallest, most wiry among them could even reach him. Each attempt to set up a pulley system was met with frustration as the rescuers struggled against the unforgiving geography of the cave. Hours ticked by, and still, John remained trapped. The initial adrenaline had long since worn off, replaced by exhaustion and a bone-deep cold that seemed to seep from the very rocks around him. His thoughts turned to his family, his wife, his baby daughter, and the child yet to be born. Would he ever see them again? As the rescue effort stretched into its 6th hour, the mood among the rescuers grew increasingly tense. They had made progress, a pulley system was finally in place, but John remained stubbornly wedged in the tiny crevice. Each attempt to pull him free was met with agonized cries as the rocks scraped against his skin. The rescuers knew that time was not on their side. The longer John remained in his inverted position, the greater the risk to his health. But giving up was not an option. They had to find a way to free him, no matter what it took. A race against time. As the hours ticked by, John's grip on reality began to slip. The combination of exhaustion, pain, and the unrelenting pressure on his brain led to terrifying hallucinations. At times, he saw the cave walls moving, closing in on him. Other times, he cried out for his wife and children, convinced they were just out of reach. Above ground, a small army of rescuers had gathered. Engineers, medical professionals, and experienced cavers all pooled their expertise, desperately trying to devise a plan to extract John from his stone prison. After several painstaking hours, they managed to install a complex pulley system, threading ropes through the twisting passageways to reach John. A glimmer of hope arose as they began to make progress. Inch by excruciating inch, they managed to lift John slightly. Each movement was accompanied by John's agonized cries as the rough cave walls scraped against his skin, but it was progress nonetheless. "You're doing great, John," one of the rescuers called out encouragingly. "We're going to get you out of here. Just hang on a little longer." But their hope was short-lived. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't pull John free of the narrow crevice. His body, swollen from being inverted for so long, seemed to be wedged even tighter than before. As frustration and desperation mounted, the rescue team began to consider more drastic measures. In hushed tones, they discussed the unthinkable, the possibility of breaking John's legs to facilitate his extraction. It was a last resort, a terrible choice between potential permanent injury and certain death if they couldn't free him soon. We can't do that to him," one rescuer whispered, voicing the horror they all felt at the idea. But as the hours wore on, even this horrific option began to seem like their only hope. Then, disaster struck. As they attempted another pull with the pulley system, something went terribly wrong. The sound of snapping rope echoed through the cave, followed by a sickening thud and a cry of pain. Ryan Schertz, one of the dedicated rescuers who had been working tirelessly to save John, had been struck by the recoiling equipment. "Man down. We need medical assistance." The call rang out, adding a new layer of urgency to an already dire situation. As some rescuers rushed to attend to Ryan, others redoubled their efforts to free John, acutely aware that time was running out. The accident seemed to cast a pall over the entire rescue operation. The realization sank in that not only was John's life in danger, but every minute they spent in this unforgiving cave put the rescuers at risk as well. Back in the tight confines of the passage where John was trapped, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. John's periods of lucidity were becoming fewer and farther between. His voice, when he managed to speak, was barely a whisper. "Please," he begged during one moment of clarity. "Tell Emily and my kids that I love them. Tell them I'm sorry." The rescuers fought back tears, their determination stronger than ever. They wouldn't let it end like this. But as the second night in Nutty Putty Cave descended, bringing with it a bone-deep chill and an almost tangible sense of despair, even the most optimistic among them began to wonder, would they be able to save John Jones, or would Nutty Putty Cave claim its first victim? As the rescue effort pushed into its 28th hour, the team steeled themselves for what they knew would be a critical phase. They had to find a way to free John soon, or risk losing him forever to the unforgiving depths of the cave. A heartbreaking conclusion. Above ground, John's family had been keeping a constant vigil. His pregnant wife, Emily, had been alternating between pacing anxiously and sitting with her head in her hands, praying for a miracle. When a grim-faced rescuer emerged from the cave entrance, the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know before he even spoke. At 11:56 p.m. on November 25, 2009, Thanksgiving Eve, John Jones was officially pronounced dead. The cave that he had entered with such enthusiasm just over a day ago had become his final resting place. The news hit the rescue team like a physical blow. Many of them had been working nonstop for over 27 hours, pushing their bodies and minds to the limit in their desperate attempt to save John. The realization that all their efforts had been in vain was devastating, but their ordeal wasn't over yet. In a cruel twist of fate, they discovered that they couldn't even recover John's body. The same factors that had made the rescue so difficult, the narrow passages, the awkward angle, the fragile nature of the cave itself, made it impossible to safely extract his remains. After extensive consultations with geologists, cave experts, and John's family, a heart-wrenching decision was made. John's body would have to be left where it was, entombed forever in the depths of Nutty Putty Cave. In the days that followed, as the nation celebrated Thanksgiving, the caving community and the Jones family mourned. The Utah cave that had been a source of adventure and excitement for so many was now a grave. To prevent any future tragedies, officials made the decision to permanently close Nutty Putty Cave. On a somber day in December, workers arrived at the cave entrance. With heavy hearts, they began the process of sealing it off. Tons of concrete were poured into the entrance, ensuring that no one would ever again face the fate that befell John Jones. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this.